we're very conscious of doing things with our people rather than to them. And I think that is all fundamental to that clear sense of purpose as well. So that's a very important part. One of the key things that we focused on over the past 5 years is that communication and engagement. And I think that has been a key part of our success.
Hi, I'm Belden Menkus. Welcome to the Purposeful Strategist, the podcast that shifts the conversation about purpose and strategy from what organizations should do to what business leaders are doing and what they've learned along the way.
My guest today is Karl Jansen, firm managing partner of Freeth, a full-service law firm with 1,200 colleagues across 13 offices in the UK. The firm has a strong reputation for its culture, progressive thinking, and commitment to delivering outstanding client service. In 2024, Freeth was named Law Firm of the Year at the Legal Business Awards and was also recognized in the Times Best Law Firms 2024. Karl's been with the firm for over 35 years and has played a key role in shaping its culture and growth strategy. He was recently recognized in the Lawyer Hot 100 for his leadership and impact. Karl, welcome to the Purposeful Strategist podcast.
Thank you, Belden. Really pleased to be here.
If you don't mind, let me just start with a basic question to get a sense of you and of Freeth. You've been at Freeth for quite a while. What first drew you there and what's kept you there?
Yeah, well, it's not quite 35 years, actually, but that's coming up very soon.
Oh, okay.
And I do refer to myself as a Freeth's lifer, so I have been here a long time. What drew me here is pretty simple, actually. It was back in 1990 when I was moving back to the East Midlands from London as a newly qualified lawyer. And I applied to various firms, had various interviews, and at Freeth's, I met the then senior partner, Ian Payne. And I actually ended up with two job offers, one from a much more established, bigger firm in Birmingham, which would have been the more obvious choice, I have to say. But it was Ian's passion, his energy, his ambition for the firm that was really persuasive. He was ahead of his time in many ways, and he was the driving force of our growth story. And he was the reason that I joined the firm.
You said sort of ahead of his time. What made Freeth and him ahead of its time at this point? And has that changed over time?
Yeah, I think it was his ambition, how he saw he could take what was a pretty small Nottingham firm to be a much bigger firm with more national coverage. One of the specific things he did was he brought in non-legal leadership of the firm. So we had a chief exec, became our chairman for many, many years, who was a tax partner from PwC. We also had a CEO alongside him who was a regional banker from Bank of Scotland. That was early 90s. That was quite a unique approach to law firm leadership. And as I say, it served us very well over the years. And in fact, it was Colin Flanagan who I succeeded only 5 years ago.
And do you think Freeth has sort of now been making changes that keep it ahead of its time?
Yes, I think you always need to be very conscious of that. I think the expectations of our people are that we want to be progressive. We want to maintain the momentum that the firm has achieved, and a key part of that is looking ahead. Now, whether you need to be ahead of all the other law firms in terms of your thinking is a different issue, but I think that clear sense of purpose and what we want to be and how that's different is a key element.
Why don't we go straight into that? You use the purpose word. One, clearly I'm very interested in. What is the sense of purpose that guides Freeth? What's it all about?
It's interesting because it's something that we have spent some time looking at and thinking about in the context of the new strategy. We've just come to the end of a 5-year strategy, which we put in place when I came into this role alongside some other leadership changes. So we've been working on what the strategy looks like for the next 5 years, 2025 through to 2030. And purpose was one of the things that we talked about. And I can't give you a sort of snappy strap line that encapsulates that, because that's something that we're looking at. But if you go to our responsible business report, which is on our website, I think that encapsulates what we're really about and our purpose. And it comes under 4 headings: people, clients, planet, and communities. And I think importantly, is there a distinct purpose? I'm not sure it's necessarily that distinct in every aspect. For me, it's about having a clear purpose. and that our people really buy into. So from a people perspective, we want to be a great place to work, and that clearly includes being diverse and inclusive. And it's about helping our people to be the best they can really be so that they can thrive in this business. When we talk about clients, we increasingly want to work with clients who share our core values. It's about being part of their success and really making a difference and delivering positive outcomes. And over the past 12 months, we've had a lot of positive publicity and profile around the post office scandal and the work that we did there. That's because I think people picked up on why we got involved in that. And that, I think, again, is a reflection of the sort of work that we want to be doing, the sort of clients that we want to be working with, the outcomes and results we want to deliver. The planet, I think, is an interesting one because some people might be skeptical about lawyers saving the planet, but we really do want to do our bit for the environment and sustainability. We were the largest law firm to be B-Corp certified, and that is a significant commitment on our part. And that ranges from our net zero plan and how that feeds into our premises discussions. And we've got 13 offices, so that's quite a significant footprint, right across to the work that we're doing in supporting our clients in relation to environmental and sustainability matters, because we've got a lot of niche expertise in those areas as well. And then the final point was communities. Again, with that footprint, 13 different locations, we do want to be part of those communities. That's about volunteering, it's about supporting local initiatives and charities, it's about social mobility. So a lot of that is being done within the communities that we work in, and helping those that may find it harder to have access to careers in law, for example. As I say, there isn't a snappy strap line, but I think that report and everything it says and under those four headings really encapsulates a lot of what our purpose is about.
Just a reflection, Carl. You've a couple times said we don't have a snappy strap line. And I do think sometimes organizations push almost too hard to have one and then lose the richness of what you just talked through. It all becomes five words that people kind of say almost without thinking. And certainly my experience sometimes has been that then the human beings in the organization sort of lose that challenge to find their own connection. Where in all this array of things we're doing as a firm do I find a way to express who I am and what I'm about? Just interesting to hear how you're approaching that.
I think that's right. I think it's much more about how you do articulate it rather than trying to craft a small number of words into a sentence. You can do that in many different ways, and it takes a lot of effort to make sure that you're consistent in that, particularly bearing in mind our growth has been significant top line, but also in terms of the number of people that we have within the business, and making sure that people understand that purpose when they join, but also they see it in action. As they progress through the business, is really important. And so I agree with you. I think it's more about that than necessarily coming up with that strap line.
So how's all that been playing out in terms of growth? Is that working?
It certainly is in terms of the growth that we're achieving. So we've just closed our latest financial year, and we're very pleased. We're above 163 million, and that's 20 million up. It's double digit growth for us, which we've been doing year on year for a long time now. We started the 5-year strategy having just exceeded 100 million. So to have that further growth, and the growth becomes harder in percentage terms year on year as you get bigger for obvious reasons. So successful there. But when we look back on those 5 years, it's about much more than just a top line number. The top line number is a reflection of the success, but the success is in so many different ways. And we've grown to over 1,200 people. There's been a lot of focus, time, and effort that's gone into bringing those people in, making sure they're the right people, and then helping them to develop within our business. We've said consistently, and we still say it, growth is a really important part of our strategy, but it's not for growth's sake. So it's got to be for the right reasons. It's got to be sustainable. We're very much about building a sustainable, resilient business. Over time, we've declined opportunities, merger opportunities, for example, that would have accelerated growth, but where we've just decided they weren't consistent with our purpose, our values, and the things that are really important to us.
You've had a 5-year strategy. It's been successful. We know the world's changing. how do you balance sort of the continuity of what made that last 5 years really work with the fact that the future's different and is going to be different? How'd you navigate through all that?
Well, its starting point is we consulted widely across the business when we were looking at the new strategy. And that's really important for us, and it's an important part of our business. It's something that actually, since I came in as part of the new leadership team 5 years ago, we were very focused on enhancing the communication and the engagement across the business. So, listening to people, talking to them about our thoughts, but also listening to what they have to say is an important part of that discussion. We'd had that 5 year strategy, it's been very successful. So, there was no need or any sense in turning that strategy on its head and having radical change. It was more about reflecting on, okay, why have we been successful over the past 5 years? But also recognizing, one, the world is changing. And so, therefore, we need to be very conscious of that. But also, as an organization, we are changing. We're a bigger, more complex business, and that needs to be reflected. The opportunities that are open to us are different to what they were 5 years ago, as well as the challenges. We see it as evolution rather than revolution. And we've got a lot of buy in, again, through that consultation. People don't want or expect us to make significant changes. And I think it's fair to say, over the 5 years of our last strategy, we've adapted, we've been agile, so we've had to change. You think about what's happened during that 5 years, it's kicked off with the pandemic. We have been very agile, and we need to continue to have that agility, even if we're setting the strategy for the next 5 years. So it's more about where we put a different focus as we look to go from where we are to where we want and expect to be in 5 years' time.
So if you had to name a small number of really important, kind of key strategic priorities over the next 5 years, what do you see those as being?
Okay, well, I think firstly, importantly for us, we will still have a national focus, but with a strong regional footprint. We're very conscious of not just following a path that most law firms have gone as they have grown, become bigger, and looked at what other law firms before them have done. So that strong regional footprint is a key part of what we're still doing.
Particularly for anybody listening who maybe isn't steeped in the world of law. What's the difference between a regional focus and a national focus? And what's the path that you might think, well, most firms do this, but we're kind of doing something a little different? Something you can sum up for kind of the lay listener, as it were.
The international law firms are very focused on the international market and will tend to have an international footprint to reflect that. Okay. I think when you talk about national law firms, where the starting point is their footprint will be within the UK. It will be very clearly UK focused and based. The contrast with regional, to my mind, is firms who may be in a number of locations and may be very strong in those locations, but don't have a national footprint so that they can genuinely say that they cover the UK, having a presence in most of the key legal markets. And the offering is then different to reflect that. So for us, with any of our regional centres, we want to have a strong offering and we want to be significant players in those regional markets. But overlaying that is those clients that are national clients, and that may be national as part of an international business, but they have a national offering, a national footprint themselves, and therefore our offering and footprint matches their requirements. In our world, we call them the enterprise clients. They're the larger clients that will tend to be getting services from our different service lines and also from different locations.
There's a path that a number of law firms have followed, which is you start out somewhere, you get a bit bigger, you start focusing on London, you start focusing on ever bigger clients, and the next thing you know, you've opened up international offices in a whole bunch of places, or you've merged with some Americans or whatever. It sounds like your thinking is a little different. So where does international fit in for you?
Yeah, it is different. The reason we're still going to have that primarily national focus is because we see a huge market opportunity still, even though we've grown a lot. If you look at any of our individual offices, particularly within those key legal markets, there's still an awful lot for us to go at in terms of market share. And that, a significant part of our growth at the moment is through winning market share. So that's the starting point for us in terms of that focus. Having said that, from our UK footprint, we are increasingly doing more and more international work. So a lot of that will be international inbound to new businesses coming into the UK who require legal support. And also, it may be international work where we're dealing with the UK aspects of that. We're doing a lot of those projects, particularly on the corporate side of our business. So, although having that national focus and not having any plans to start planting lots of flags around the world, we will have an increased focus on winning more of that international work because we do see a lot of potential there. And that will be also through, at the moment, we're part of the Baker Tilly legal network. We also have a lot of sort of best friend relationships around the world. So, through those relationships, we will build on that international work as well.
We've sort of talked about regional, national, international. Beyond that kind of footprint and focus issue, are there other key things? There might even be things that have been part of your strategic priorities for quite a while. Are there other things you'd say over the next 5 years? Here's a few things we want to make sure we really do.
Firstly, innovation is going to be front and center of our plans. That's been part of our strategy, obviously, for the past 5 years. Bearing in mind how things have rapidly evolved over the past 5 years, particularly in terms of Gen AI, then innovation is going to be an increased focus. And innovation isn't all about tech. Obviously, there are lots of different aspects to innovation. The other thing, and I've touched on it, is our enterprise clients. Those clients who do sort of leverage off everything that we can offer as a firm, whether it's the SME market, whether it's private clients, we still service private clients. Our offering needs to still be strong to those sort of clients, but increasingly we have a really strong offering to those enterprise clients. They tend to also bring the bigger, more exciting projects as well, and we're seeing many more of those. So we've been very successful again over the past 5 years in winning more of those relationships, growing those relationships. Often they come in one area of work and then we expand out from there. So that's going to be a particular focus. And that's alongside our sector initiative, sector focus, because the two go hand in hand, as indeed does the international aspect. A lot of these things, as you'd expect, are a bit like concentric circles. They overlap and complement each other.
Just reflecting on what you said there about how these things sort of reinforce each other or concentric circles or however you want to think about it. It does seem to me that this sort of regional versus national thing you were talking about picks up that even though you do have 13 offices, to a client, you're one firm. You're going to bring the whole power of the firm to them.
Yeah, and that's a really important part of it. And again, it's something that came out really strongly from the consultation around the strategy was the one firm. That is going to be a very strong theme as we go out to launch that across the business. And it will play very well internally as well as you say externally. And it's interesting because we've seen this recently in some very successful tenders for new enterprise clients, where part of the feedback has been your team really came across as a joined up team, that you all knew each other, that you knew what your purpose was, you knew about our business, but it felt like you were one firm. And contrasting with other firms who sat across the table from them, when you get that sort of feedback, it does reinforce the strength of that as a client proposition. I think it's important that clients see that. And one of our strengths and the reason we have been successful and the feedback we get is that clients really do enjoy working with our people. And I think a key part of that is that they see a team, they see people who enjoy working with each other within our business. That reflects on what we are as a business, and our clients like that.
Yeah, yeah. I want to come back to something you sort of touched on, which is AI. Clearly, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of activity.
Yeah.
How do you think it's going to play out over the next 5 years in the legal world? And what are you doing about that?
So, one thing, we're not trying to predict how it is going to play out over the next 5 years, because I think that's really, really difficult at the moment. for a number of years now. I'm going to say 10, 15 years. There's been a lot of smoke and mirrors around this. A lot of law firms have talked about the great things they're doing, etc. But it hasn't happened. But I think we all recognise the developments over the past couple of years, particularly around Gen AI. That's a different game, and that is going to change things. Starting point for us, and we were very clear about this when there was all the talk about Gen AI initially, was this is something to embrace rather than to fear it, because there was a lot of doom and gloom about everybody's going to be losing their jobs, etc. So we turned it into a positive that we do want to embrace. We want to engage with this. It is going to change the way that we work. The we there is us as a firm, but also it's the wider legal sector in our view, particularly when it comes to those activities that are more process driven. But fundamentally, we believe that clients are still going to value experience, insight, and judgment, and strong, trusted relationships. That's a really key element to it. So, again, for us, it's about adapting, making best use of the new tech for our business and for our clients. So, starting point was within a wider focus on innovation generally, we really encouraged our people to embrace and engage with AI. And you hear about other businesses, law firms who have sort of shut it off. We took a different approach. So within an agreed framework with appropriate safeguards, we encourage people to try it out. And we've also recognized, I think this is part of the change, that it is going to need different skills. So our lawyers, but also we employ a lot of non-lawyers as well. But all of those people are going to have additional different skills, digital skills, to make the most of what's coming. And that's, again, a key part of our learning and development strategy. And that is a part of the strategy over the next 5 years. The other thing that we've done is to proactively go and talk to our clients. So rather than just trying to get on with things and hope they won't notice, which was never going to happen, we've gone out and actually said, let's talk about it. Let's talk about how we can use it, how they can use it as well, and to best effect and to mutual benefit. Because if you get this right, it can be good for us and for the clients as well.
Within some frameworks, you've sort of taken a bottom-up approach. You've kind of said to people, engage with it, try it out, see what works, learn. By way of contrast, it seems to be other organizations have taken much more of a top-down, we've developed a solution, we've developed an approach, and sort of said that's what everybody has to do. Was that a conscious choice or?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of the two, because the top down is we are going to our people with products. So we made a conscious decision. We're not going to try to develop new products ourselves. Our view is there are people out there who are much better equipped to do that, not least in terms of the amount of money that needs to be thrown at that. Also, it's their business, it's their skill set. So there are lots of people out there developing all sorts of different products. Our approach is we're looking for the right products to suit our business. And again, there will be certain products that will suit different sorts of law firms who have a different client base, different sort of work type. And so we're looking what is going to make a difference to our business and to our clients. And that's the focus. We have a head of innovation who is all over this stuff. He's identifying what he thinks are the right products. And we're going then, whether it's the teams or on a wider basis, and saying, let's have a look at this, let's trial this and see how this might work. So we're already using a number of AI products, we're trialing a number, and we're looking at some others that we think are coming through. It's that, but also it's because we've built that enthusiasm, that appetite from our people to engage, that it's an easy fit, and we immediately have people putting their hand up and saying, I want to trial this. I think this is great for my particular area of work, and let me have it. So that's the approach. We're not jumping in feet first. I think that would be an easy thing to do. So it's a measured approach. We talk about being second in the peloton. So we want to be up there, but not necessarily the ones that are developing these products and taking all the the risks that might go along with that.
Yeah, yeah. To me, one of the things that's really strong about what you're saying is a deep sort of sense of who you are, what your place is in the whole ecosystem. I suspect we've both seen companies go really wrong by misunderstanding what their role is.
I think that's right. It comes back to the purpose as well. That is a really important part of when you're thinking about purpose, when you're thinking about strategy, rather than just looking to be the next firm that goes the route that every other firm has gone as they've grown. Okay, no, actually, what do we want to be? Where do we think the opportunities are that we can really maximize?
Changing the sort of tone, maybe in the direction of the conversation a little. For you personally, what's been the most surprising or rewarding part about leading Freeths over the years?
When I answer this, you might say, well, why is that surprising? Because my response to that is really it's the year on year growth. And it's not just the growth, it's actually the business getting better along the way as well. Again, as I say, it's not just about a top line number, it's about everything that sits underneath that and the success that we've had over that period. And a key element of that is actually the recognition that we're now getting for the great things that we're doing, and a lot of which we've been doing for quite a while. But we've been a bit under the radar, I think, in the past, and that's partly the way we are. Our focus is about doing a great job. It's about making this a great place for our people. It's not necessarily been about shouting about everything that we're doing, because I don't think that necessarily comes naturally to us, to the classic Freeds person. But as you all know, we have had a lot more profile for very good reasons, particularly over the past 12 months. So we're no longer what we used to be referred to as a bit of a hidden gem. And so come back to the question about, why is that surprising? Why is it rewarding? I think we still have to work hard for everything that we get. Yeah. And we don't take anything for granted. I think that's really important. And that's part of our continuing ambition. What we've achieved over the past 5 years in particular is just a source of huge satisfaction and pride for me, for the wider leadership team, and I think across the firm. That's the point. When we just announced our numbers internally, everybody takes a massive amount of satisfaction and pride from that because it's our firm. Each year we do surprise ourselves by how successful we have been. I see that as a positive. We feel as though we need to continue to work really hard year on year to keep that momentum up.
You mentioned sort of becoming more visible, and you've mentioned the post office, and I'm sure most people listening will kind of have a sense of the post office story, if not know it in depth. And I don't want to ask you to brag too much, but it just might be useful to kind of hear if you can discuss it. How did that come about, and why did it end up with Freeth playing the role it did? I have a sense there's an interesting story in there.
There is an interesting story, and that's why the drama, I think, that ITV did, both the drama and actually the documentary that went alongside it, really captured people's imagination and also captured the story pretty well. I won't take any credit for this at all. In very simple terms, it was our head of dispute resolution, James Hartley, who picked up on this issue, and that was actually listening to an interview on the Today programme on Radio 4 as he was in a taxi in London. And he recognised that there was something that wasn't right there and that the people involved were really struggling to get engagement there, so that they could actually right the wrongs and get people to listen. And he picked up on the back of that. And where other law firms had looked at it and basically taken the decision, this is too hard, where are we as a business? How are we going to make something out of this? James and his team were much more, I think, committed from the outset and determined to try to help. And a key element of that was actually going out and getting third party funding for that case. And that wasn't easy. That wasn't easy at all. I have to also say that group action, that type of group action, is not what we do a lot of. So it was a bit of a departure in some ways. And we looked at that as a board, and bearing in mind there was an investment for us in that as well. We looked and said, okay, is this what we should be doing? Can we help this group? Are we the right firm to do it? And we took the view that we were. And as I say, through that determination, we got the funding that allowed it to get it off the ground. Clearly, it was over a number of years. It took a long time before that really got the publicity and the recognition in terms of the scandal and the miscarriage of justice involved, that took a long time to get to that point. And we continue to help that group and a number of the sub postmasters. As you'll know, it's still going through the compensation scheme. And so, that first successful decision was a key element. But now we need to make sure that people get compensated properly for what they've suffered.
It is a great story. And for me, it's particularly illuminating the sort of the character, both of James to kind of step forward, but of Freeth as a firm to say, even this isn't really our bread and butter, but actually something needs to be done here and we can do it. And then to sensibly manage the commercial sort of exposure around it all. I just think it's really a very sort of insightful picture into some of those dynamics.
Yeah, and I think for our own people, even those that weren't involved in it, and for our clients who have known us for a long time, I think a lot of people, it made them reflect on what it says about the firm. We talk about doing the right thing. That's one of our key mantras, and that does play through a lot of the decisions that we've made over time. We did not go out to seek the profile around that case. It was much more about the people involved, the individual sub postmasters, and them getting the right recognition and redress. But clearly, our role in achieving that, we're very grateful that that's been recognised.
What advice might you give to other leaders who are looking to grow an organization, a business, or some other organization while staying true to its purpose?
One of the most important things for me is to never forget what's important to your people. Particularly in a people business, and the importance of bringing them with you. It's one of the special things about how we go about things. So we're very conscious of doing things with our people rather than to them. And I think that is all fundamental to that clear sense of purpose as well. So that's a very important part. One of the key things that we focused on over the past 5 years is that communication and engagement. And I think that has been a key part of our success. And also, very importantly, again, came through the consultation. It's been an important part of keeping what we see as a special culture. And not losing sight of purpose as we do get bigger and we have lots more opportunities to grow. Having that sense still of why we're here and what we're really about.
Anything we haven't covered you think it's important for listeners to know?
Well, I suppose one word that hasn't been mentioned so far is authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really important aspect of leadership. Again, particularly in a people business, and particularly in, I think, a law firm professional services business, when you have got a lot of very intelligent and ambitious within our business. And that is one of the challenges in a leadership role in a business like ours, because you've got lots of people with opinions and a lot of good thoughts, but it's actually what keeps it really exciting, I think, and engaging. Being honest and authentic underpins trust and respect. And trust and respect are absolutely fundamental to effective leadership.
I think that's a really great note to end on. Karl, thank you for joining us. Thanks for sharing at least, this bit of the journey of Freeth. I'm looking forward to continuing to hear how it all goes. And if you're up for it, maybe we'll have you back at some point to share the next bit of the journey.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. And thank you very much.
Fantastic. Again, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Purposeful Strategist. In addition to being available on our website, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. If you enjoyed this episode, please do follow us and leave us a 5-star review. It helps others find the podcast. Thanks again, and join us soon for the next episode of The Purposeful Strategist.